Hi everybody, my name is Michelle, and today I'm going to be talking to you about why minors should not be allowed to undergo gender affirmation surgery without parental consent. So, gender affirmation surgery is irreversible procedures that help people transition to their gender identity. There are other things that people can undergo, transgender people can undergo to help them make their bodies match how they identify, such as taking hormonal supplements like testosterone, or they could do other things, just the way that they dress or the way that they the name they choose to go by, the pronouns they choose to go by. However, gender affirmation surgery is probably the most drastic choice. One, because it's irreversible, two, because it's very expensive, and three, because it has a very high complication rate. Um, and part of the very expensive is it's not covered by any health insurances, and a lot of doctors do not provide this service, and therefore finding a reliable doctor with a good track record is very difficult for most people. So, as far as the argument for, should minors be able to make this decision on their own, the argument saying that, oh, they should be able to, make this decision on their own, that that parental consent should not be required, is saying that a lot of parents don't support, that they may feel transgender in a certain way, which is very understandable, and transgender rights are very important. But you have to remember, that they can make that decision for themselves when they are an adult. But as a minor still living under their parents' household, it's not just a legal thing, but it's also the best thing for the minor, for the child, to have their parents involved. One of the main arguments about minors being able to choose to get gender affirmation surgery is that you're not respecting their autonomy. But minors aren't autonomous. And when you're a minor, you can't buy alcohol, you can't buy a vape, you can't vote, you can't get a hotel until you're 21, you can't get your ears pierced until you're 16 without a parent. You can't even buy a credit card, or you can't check out of school early unless your mom calls you out. So there are a lot of things you can't do, little things that you can't do as a minor. And so something as huge as an irreversible gender change surgery should not be something that you are able to make a decision on completely by yourself. So regarding, oh, it's not respecting minors' autonomy, minors don't have autonomy. We are still dependent on our parents, even if we have a job, even if we say, okay, we pay for our own car or we pay for our own college. Like, we are still dependent on our parents, and most of us in some way or shape or form. And, although parents and guardians may not be supportive of, your transgender identity, it's important to recognize that they are doing things in their best interests, and that perhaps this is not the best thing for you to be doing at this moment when there's a lot of change going on in your life. So, for the basis of this discussion, minors is not just below the age of 18. I am counting minors as adolescents, which as under the age of 25. So the reason I picked this number was because, according to the National Institute of Health, NIH, the brain is not fully developed until the age of 25. Even then, it's not a strict number. It can happen before, it can happen after. But they usually say on average by the age of 25. So we are still going through all our major developmental, emotional, hormonal, physical changes up until the age of 25. So should medically necessary, for our actual physical health and well-being, we should be avoiding taking any elective surgeries, not just for transgender affirmation surgery, but just in general, because we are still hormonally, emotionally going through so many changes in our lives. And something like that is completely irreversible and has so many complications and risks, and it's so expensive. It's best to be confident in your decision in the long run by taking the time to either, if you're a minor, just going through the steps with your parents, or waiting till you're older and you're your brain's developed enough and you are more capable of making this decision. So as far as, the medical risks, so there's two parts to, the risks, the considerations that you must consider when you're considering gender affirmation surgery. There's the ethical risks and there's the medical risks. So although the regret rate for gender affirmation surgery is rather low, however, this has just not really been a thing that's been around for long enough to have any longitudinal studies about it. This has only really been going on for the past 10, 15 years. And longitudinal studies usually cover, okay, let's talk to these people who got this surgery when they were 20, let's talk to them when they're 60. And we are just not at that point yet. So we really cannot say, these are the long-term side effects of it yet. So we really don't know how that turns out. So as of right now, this day and time, it only has a 2.3% unsatisfaction rate. And unsatisfaction rate doesn't mean like, oh, it didn't go the way that I wanted it to. That number is a lot higher. But saying I regret doing it completely, that number is very low. However, the complication rate is 76.5%, which is, if you think about it, that's a huge number. And the complications can be as small as, infected wound site, and as big as you're never able to have children. You have to continue to have surgeries to get things fixed. One of the major complications is problems in their blood and problems in the urinary tract. A lot of people, especially if they transition from female to male, are no longer able to urinate at all, which is one of the biggest side effects for that kind of transition, which is just crazy to think about. And a lot of these medical terms, let's say, a minor is going through this paperwork, trying to learn about it, thinking that maybe this is something that they want to do. They want to affirm their gender identity. But, me at 16 would not have understood any of the stuff. And I was a medical geek. I'm in pre-med, like this is what interests me, so I knew how to read that kind of stuff, and it still doesn't make sense to me. So I can't imagine being 16, 17, considering these surgeries, and yes, you feel that you're in the wrong body and that you want to outwardly look like how you feel on the inside. However, there are just so many parts to this that this should not be a decision that you make on your own. So the solution that I suggest is there already are programs that exist to educate and reach out to minors and their parents. However, they are very few and very not very strong, and it's usually programs solely hosted by the doctors who are performing these surgeries, who charge a lot of money, and so they might be biased in what they decide to share with you, because unfortunately some doctors are in it for the money and not for helping individuals. So I propose we enhance programs to better inform minors and their parents or guardians so that they can reach the best possible decision together. And a lot of people have problems with saying, oh, they require parental consent because, like I said before, parents may not give the consent, and then the child feels trapped in a body that is not their own. However, we have to understand is that most of the time they decide that they're transgender in this phase, and I believe it was 67%. It was 37% of the time that a minor, a adolescent, which is between the age 15 and 25, they went back and decided, actually, I'm my original, the gender I was born, like my sex. They transitioned back to their original gender. And so considering, taking these irreversible steps without parental advice and without, proper guidance, because these programs just really do not exist, or the ones that do exist are just not sufficiently guiding enough these young people to make the best decision for their own health. So all in all, parental consent is not just a legal formality, but it's an essential part of ensuring the well-being of our youth. And yeah, that's it. Any questions? Anybody have any questions?
Yeah, my question is, what is the legal status of this, like right now across the U.S.? Is it mostly legal, or is not something that is common?
So right now it's a decision up to each state. I believe there are 13 states. I had the graph in my slideshow. I believe that there are 13 states across the country that, as of 2020, I believe, 13 states that allow um, gender affirmation surgery without parental consent. But it's one of the main debates, in office right now, like the abortion debate and things like that. It's one of the main debates in office right now that is still being discussed. Our president elect is considering actually taking that power to make that decision away from the states. So it's just kind of one of those things we're sitting on waiting to see what happens. But more and more states, I believe I believe it was 2020, it was 13 states, but I think that number has increased since then. States that allow minors to undergo the surgery without parental consent. However, no health insurance still cover it at all. So even if they're allowed to without parental consent, many people cannot afford it anyway. Many minors, especially, cannot afford it anyway because they're just not funded. Any other questions?
Yeah, I just have a quick question. Um, so since like gender affirmation surgery is like a fairly new thing with like it like now being like very successful and like not as dangerous as it was like years ago, do you think older individuals who may now like be more confident in like getting the surgery, like do you think they're like more likely to like receive that, or is it only like more like younger individuals type of thing?
So, according to statistics, the age range of people receiving gender affirmation surgery in the past 5 years, I believe it was 19 to 37, which is still, considered in that lower age range. Um, I think that for the older transgender population, above the age of 37, this just wasn't something that they even like considered as a possibility in their youth. And so it seems as more of a foreign concept once they grow older. Um, 19 was the youngest before, this new rule about the minors being able to do this because most parents in truth do not give consent, which is why this movement is so big. But it's important to take a step to not just say, oh, the parents are not, supporting their kids, and instead of just getting angry, trying to reach out instead of reaching out to the kids and trying to make it easier for them to go do this, because there's still the money aspect even if they're allowed to do it without parental consent, but trying to reach out to the parents more and trying to get them to come to an understanding and to level with their children, maybe taking other steps like going on, a hormone supplement or something until this age and seeing how we like that and seeing how that's going on, and taking steps, with the parents to try and get them to become more understanding to their child's situation, I think needs to be more of the focus. And I think, like answering your question, that would really help because, you know, older generations, it wasn't really, this wasn't even something that was thought of as a possibility. So it wasn't discussed at all. And like you said, because it's a newer thing, we're just not well informed about this stuff. And like Augusta said, there have been a lot of reforms made. Like, it is much safer now than it was 10 years ago, but I think we still have a long way to go. The complication rate is still very high. It's decreasing, but it's still very high. And there are some surgeries that aren't as damaging or risky as other ones. So I think parents and children and the minors just need to be more aware of what you can do, what other steps you can take, what kinds of gender affirmation surgeries there are. And if we could become more informed, and it was the risk rate will decrease, and the success rate will increase. All right, well, there's no more questions. Thanks, guys, for listening.